It's 2-for-1 time on the show. Let's talk a little bit about one of the big stories of the day with my man Daryl Guru Johnson. Catch him on 95.7 The Game, weekday mornings 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Eastern. And get some thoughts with him. Get some thoughts with him on this big story involving Bob Myers, which, let's be honest, Goo, it's not a huge surprise that Bob Myers stepped down. He had, there had been some talk throughout the season that this would be sort of the end of the line for him. So what was the reaction both for you and the audience and the fan base in San Francisco with Myers deciding to depart?
I love you, JP. Thanks for the invite. But I'll tell you this, a lot of people are having fun, the callers and listeners, because Bob has let me borrow his seat a few times, courtside seat. And they're like, oh, Guru, the only reason you're mad is you don't get the seats, please. But I got to tell you, Jason, I didn't see it coming. And I tweeted it last night. I should have. All the tea leaves said, you know what? All good things must come to an end. But the fact that Draymond Green talked about what Bob Myers meant to him, Steph Curry, Steve Kerr, I kind of thought they were going to run it back. And, Jason, I got 3 children. They're older now in college, but I know what it's like to have 3 young kids, and Bob has 3 young daughters. And if you want to say and share with the world that you hadn't been around and you want to spend more time with them, who can question that? But let me tell you this today, what was odd at the presser. His owner, his boss, Joe Lacob, said to the world to hear that he didn't agree with his decision, and he just found out about it today. So I love Joe Lacob, but I got to tell you, Jason, I'm wondering, and I would never say Bob's lying and the kid thing is not real, but I just wonder how much taxation comes with working for a guy like Joe Lacob. And if you listen word for word to that presser, it wasn't strange, but there were a lot of little weird tea leaves about almost their dynamic and what it's like to work for, and I can't answer this, Joe Lacob. But I think Bob Myers told us by stepping down, if that makes any sense, JP.
Have you heard? I mean, look, you're in the belly of the beast there in San Francisco. You're practically down the street from the arena. I mean, have you heard of people saying that Joe Lacob is tough to work for? Have there been anecdotes from whether it be players, Steve Kerr? Has there been those sort of tea leaves that you're hearing and what you thought you might have heard from Bob Myers today?
You know what? That's a great question. But outside of Joey Lightyears, the nickname that he gave himself, no. So I'm going to give Joe Lacob credit in that regard. But you just talk about Draymond Green, and I don't know if you remember a game in the regular season towards the end, the Pelican game. Draymond was having what I deem a meltdown.
Oh, yeah, I remember.
And Bob had to come out of his seat to tame him, basically. But that was part of their relationship and their dynamic. But again, I haven't heard anything about Joe Lacob and how strenuous it is mentally to work for Joe Lacob for Bob Myers. But today just seemed rather odd, and the fact that he didn't ride it out, Bob, with the big 3 or Steph, Dre, and Clay. And, I got to be honest with you, Jason, I would love for nothing more than to leave something to my kids, like a legacy. So you talk about Jerry Jones and Stephen Jones and, on the bad days, because there's been some good ones. But Kirk Lacob, assistant to basketball operations VP for the Golden State Warriors. I was sitting here thinking this was a power play by Joe Lacob, who wanted to go cheap and not offer Bob top dollar to be the top GM. He's got 4 titles. What are we doing? But to come to find out today, what was revealed is Bob had a lucrative offer to become the highest GM in the NBA. So that leads me to be to the point to where it wasn't about money. Joe did his part. It was bigger than that, and that's what has me thinking now. Joe Lacob today, again, I keep saying it, Jason, he said, I don't understand it, and Joe comes from a venture capitalist background, and when he left his job, he said it was successful. A lot of people were asking, why would you leave this? He said he felt like Bob Myers was doing it, but it didn't sit well with him, Jason. So I say all that to say is I thought this was a play to make his son be the next GM of the Warriors, and now it doesn't look like it. And Joe Lacob, to be honest, was irritated a bit today.
Daryl Guru Johnson, host 95.7 The Game. Catch him weekdays, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Eastern over there with my man Mark Steinmetz. Can I get a thought from you on this? And maybe I'm being simplistic, but maybe Bob Myers looks, and is it more of an indictment on the direction he thinks this group and this roster is headed? I mean, look, if this team had won a championship or gone to an NBA final or even a Western Conference final, he could talk about family all he wants, but at the end of the day, I can't help but wonder if he looks and says, all right, the best days of this thing are behind us. Get out as close to the top as you can, 1 year removed from an NBA championship. He can do anything he wants for his next move. He could take time off. He could go be a president of a university. I mean, there's going to be so many opportunities for this guy. Did he figure out get out as close to a high note as you can?
Jason, I'm going Woody Harrelson on True Detective for the best series of that whole show, the first season. But you're right. But let me just mention 3 other names to where you were going. James Wiseman's no longer a Warrior. That was a blessing from the basketball gods. The number 2 pick that you got, listen to me now, you guys with an S messed up. Jonathan Kuminga all of a sudden couldn't play in the playoffs. Moses Moody, okay, I've been advocating why wasn't he playing during the regular season, but you trust him in the playoffs. My point is, I need to find out where those Bob's picks and Steve said, this is not the direction I want to go and count on young people. And how much did Joe Lacob, how much was he involved? And let me tell you something. I don't have those answers, but he was involved. And to what degree, to me, is what might have deteriorated this relationship. It's 3 people. I go by the groceries. That's the GM. I get the okay by the owner. And if Steve Kerr was somehow stubborn, and I love the guy, or said, you know what, this is not my style, counting on young guys, why weren't they ready? And why is Wiseman in Detroit? That might fall at the doorstep of Bob Myers. And maybe, Jason, that soured the relationship somehow. Only those 3 know.
Is Mike Dunleavy Jr. the right person for the job?
We just talked to him a few weeks ago, and I asked him point blank range, is this something you wanted to do to be a general manager? And Jason, he looked me in the face and said, out of nowhere. I've also thought about coaching, and I'm not mad at that. But when I got that answer, it didn't digest and process with me that he's losing sleep at night to be a GM. I mean, if you're talking about coaching / GM, you ain't got your mind made up. So to me, if you ask me, Jay, and I'll share with you, I think his son, Kirk Lacob, is going to be the next general manager of the Golden State Warriors.
Before I let you go, a couple of quickies on baseball. Giants playing a little better since Casey Schmidt and Patrick Bailey got called up. I have loved Schmidt. I advocated for this kid getting called up. He is hitting the cover off the ball. He has definitely provided a spark to the team, as has Bailey. How do you feel about the Giants right now in that competitive NL West, where the Diamondbacks have surprised, obviously, with the Dodgers, who you knew were going to be good?
It's funny. I'm walking down Market Street on my way to see the lowly Pittsburgh Pirates. I know you don't like that, against the Giants, but Casey Schmidt has been all that and some. And let me tell you something, Jay. After the 107 win season 2 years ago, I didn't know what the Giants had. Last year they kind of told us, but Schmidt and Bailey have just provided some youth. It looks different even when they lose. And I know it's not just all those two, but I got my eraser out, and I got to give Farhan some credit. Conforto, you got Haniger back. They're starting to pitch, guys not named Logan Webb. So I'm looking at this Giant team like they not a strategy, but they got like a formula of Giant baseball. And I know they're only 2 up, but they were 9 back, early in the season. So Jay, just making one story short, I think the Giants got some action. And Casey Schmidt and Bailey are a big part of that. I
got 45 seconds. How sickened are you by what's going on in Oakland in the East Bay?
I got a tuxedo in my closet, a black suit tuxedo, and it's for the funeral for the city of Oakland. Not only have they lost the Warriors, and you can feel they're in the Bay, they're not. They're not in Oakland. The Raiders are gone, and now the A's basically are gone. And if you look at the attendance like I did the other night, Jay, it wasn't but 2,500 people in the ballpark. It's sad. I think of Billy Martin and Reggie Jackson and Ricky Henderson and La Russa. I ain't CNN, but I'll go political on you. Something's got to be done with the mayor. And the fact that Oakland's going to be a ghost town when it comes to sports is just sad.
Daryl Guru Johnson, catch him weekday
I love
mornings,
you, man.
10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Eastern. Enjoy the baseball tonight. Good to talk to you, my friend.
Thank you.
Anthony Bass controversy. I wanted to bring in Mike Wilner to talk about it. Does a great job. Baseball columnist with the Toronto Star. He's been on our show before. Host of the Deep Left Field podcast as well, to get his thoughts on it. We heard from Anthony Bass earlier today, Mike, with his apology after those postings that he has since deleted. First, I want to get your thoughts on the apology itself, and did it feel forced to you?
Well, yeah, it absolutely did.
Rolling along on this Tuesday edition of the show. I always hate having to talk about these stories because they obviously hit close to home for me. For anybody who listens to the show, you obviously know my own story and who I am. But every now and again, we get these stories in sports radio that is of a politically insensitive nature. He basically posted some anti-LGBTQ plus rhetoric relating to boycotting Target and the like. I wanted to bring in Mike. Rhetoric relating to boycotting Target and the like. I wanted to bring in Mike Wilner to talk about it. Does a great job. Baseball columnist with the Toronto Star. He's been on our show before. Host of the Deep Left Field podcast as well, to get his thoughts on it. We heard from Anthony Bass earlier today, Mike, with his apology after those postings that he has since deleted. First, I want to get your thoughts on the apology itself, and did it feel forced to you?
Well, yeah, it absolutely did. I mean, because it was. Because it was. People don't have revelations over the course of 24 hours that something they did was all of a sudden wrong, because people, I think, that they tend to disagree with on social media tell them that it's wrong. So, yes, I think Anthony Bass would have preferred to just hide and not say anything and have the whole thing blow over, but that's not what was going to happen. So, yeah, I think he believed that it was in his best interest to apologize. And he did. He didn't read a statement, but I'm equally confident that he didn't write what he said. And he didn't take questions after we were told ahead of time that he wasn't going to take questions, which sort of, removes much of the sincerity of an apology if you're not willing to talk about, why you think what you did was wrong, or what it is, why you think that it's something you need to apologize for.
Mike, is this a sustainable situation for the organization? Is Bass remaining on the roster? Can team president Mark Shapiro basically just kind of let this blow over? Or, more about that city of Toronto than anybody, and it's a very diverse city. It obviously has a vibrant LGBTQ plus community. Will fan reaction dictate what happens next? The community, sponsors, are they just taking a wait and see approach? And is that the right approach from the organization?
That's a lot to unpack right there. First of all, I'm standing here like just outside the third base coaching box, staring at a huge Budweiser sign that's in left center field. And that was one of the companies that Bass, whatever he posted, called upon people to boycott. So that's a very interesting thing to deal with right there, just as far as that goes. But yeah, look, Toronto is an incredibly diverse city. Canada is a very, very different country than the United States as far as attitudes. And, we've got the Christo-fascism creeping in here with what just happened in Alberta yesterday. But we're hoping to keep it at bay. And honestly, I don't know. I don't know what the organization does. I mean, do you give him a chance to make good on his apology? He said he was going to put the Blue Jays' resources to use and educate himself. Do you give him a chance to do that? Or do you just let him go? I mean, I don't think it's something that will blow over. I don't think it's something that's going to go away. Cynically, I think it might depend on how he pitches. And if he's pitching well and helping them win, he'll get a far longer leash than if he's not. And right now he is pitching really, really well. Although the season numbers don't show that. I think he's given up one run in his last 9 appearances and just 1 hit. So, he's going to get booed mercilessly here every time he comes into a game, every time his name is mentioned. Will that be too much? Will the distraction be too much? And the Blue Jays just want to cut bait? Maybe. But I don't know. We're going to have to see what happens over the course of the next little while. But, Pride Month starts on Thursday. So it's Pride weekend here next weekend when the Jays get back after their little road trip to New York on this weekend. So it's going to be front and center.
Mike, this team's lost 7 of 10. Sort of superimpose this story to that backdrop. If they had won 7 of 10 and they're in second place, does it get treated differently than it does with this team being in dead last, albeit a couple of games over 500? Obviously, it's been a disappointing start to the season, a third of the year through, third of the way through the season. How much does all of that sort of play into this? Another distraction, or I shouldn't say another, but a distraction for a team that right now can't really afford that.
Yeah, I think in pro sports, sometimes you have to think that way, but I don't think the reaction is any different. If the Blue Jays, 28 and 26, whether they're in last place in the AL East with this record or in first place in the AL Central with the same record, or whether they're, 48 and 6, I think the reaction is the same. I think the fans are equally as upset. And I don't think anything happens differently.
Talking with Mike Wilner, columnist at the Toronto Star, host of the Deep Left Field podcast as well, who joins us on the show. Before I let you go, a thought on this Blue Jays team that has struggled, but again, at 28 and 26, if you match them up against the rest of the American League, it doesn't look as bad. Obviously, they have a lot of teams to leapfrog when it comes to a wild card spot. We're only a third of the way through the season. Take the Anthony Bass story for a moment and put it aside and just give me a thought on where this Blue Jays team is in terms of the standings and sort of what needs to happen for them to sort of get beyond this sort of mediocre level of baseball they're playing so far.
Well, they're playing terrible baseball right now. I mean, you said that they've lost 7 of their last 10, but this is a team that was 18 and 9 at one point this season, and now they're 28 and 26. So they've lost 17 of their last 26. The last homestand, they swept the Braves and then lost 6-7 to the Yankees and Orioles. So it's rough. They've lost 10 out of their last 14 games. So what they need to do is start being smarter, start making better decisions on the bases, start taking care of the baseball better, and start getting hits with runners in scoring position. And getting out of the AL East is going to help a little bit, right? They were in the teeth of the beast for a while, and when you're doing that and you're not playing well, things are going to go really, really, really badly for you. And they went 2-9 against the Yankees, Orioles, and Tampa Bay Rays all in a row. They're much better than this, and they just basically have to start playing to their capabilities the way they were playing before these last 2 weeks, because it really has just been 2 weeks ago they had the 4th best record in the American League, and now they're 4 games out of the final wild card spot.
It's wild. And look, I mean, I'm a Yankee fan, even though I live on the West Coast in the U.S., and watching, sort of the ups and downs of their season as well. I mean, a lot of teams are obviously going through it and looking at what Baltimore and the Rays are doing atop the division. There's certainly no let up from either of those two teams. Mike Wilner, always appreciate it, columnist, Toronto Star, giving us some time on the show. Check out his podcast, the Deep Left Field podcast. And I also want to finish with this. And I hope you don't mind me saying it because I know you mentioned it on Twitter. You made a donation to It Gets Better Canada for $52. That's the uniform number of Anthony Bass. And as a man that self-identifies as openly gay and one that has spent more than half my life talking about sports, I appreciate that action from you. So I just wanted to say from the bottom of my heart, thank you very much.
Well, I appreciate the thank you. I didn't do it for the thank you. I did it because, it's a way to show support, and I put his name on the donation too, in honor of Anthony Bass, with honor and quotes. But these are the little things that you can do to help, and it's not, it's not enough to just say the right thing. Action needs to be taken, and support needs to be given, and I try to do it whenever I can. And it's just in case it came out the wrong way when I said the fans are upset with Anthony Bass. They should be, and they have every right to be. And I'm upset with them, and everybody around here is upset with them. And it's not about politics, and it's not about free speech, and it's not about everybody having the right to their opinion. It's about try not to hurt people, and there's a saying, right, that you should always. Trying to remember it specifically, but you should always try to be kind whenever that time comes about, and it's always that time.